How do you make a woman choose you? Genuinely choose you, not settle for you, not tolerate you, but actively want you. When every cultural signal you have absorbed tells you that the game belongs to younger men. I know that question. I know where it comes from. Not from vanity, not from ego, from the quiet, accumulated weight of showing up in rooms where you feel like background, where the energy moves around you rather than toward you, and where you have started, somewhere deep and private, to wonder whether the window has already closed. It hasn't. And the belief that it has is not modesty. It is a lie you were handed so many times you started carrying it as truth. The problem isn't your age. It's that nobody ever showed you what actually makes a woman choose a man at this stage of life. And that what she is choosing for is precisely what you have been building without knowing it had any value. Today, that changes. Hello and welcome back. I have spent years in research studying female attraction psychology, the science of adult mate choice, and specifically what women who have lived enough to know their own minds are actually responding to when they commit fully to a man. And I want to speak directly to the men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are watching this today, the men who have shown up, done the work, survived the losses, and built something real inside themselves, but who still walk into a room carrying the quiet assumption that they are not quite enough, not impressive enough, not young enough, not visible enough. What I am about to tell you is not encouragement. It is mechanism. It is the documented, research-backed psychology of why women, particularly women who have accumulated enough experience to choose wisely, choose the men they choose. And when you understand that mechanism, the invisibility dissolves, not because you performed better, because you finally understood what she was actually looking for. Stay with me. The feeling of invisibility that many men at your stage of life carry is not a neutral observation about reality. It is the product of a specific, sustained cultural narrative, one that conflates youth with desirability and age with diminishment. That narrative is wrong, and the research makes it clear. A 2023 large-scale international study by Botze and colleagues published in the journal Human Nature and drawing on the partner preferences of over 17,000 single women across 147 countries found that most partner preferences remain stable across age. What women want does not dramatically change as they get older. What does increase with age is women's preference for confidence and assertiveness in a partner. Not youth, not performance. The quality of knowing who you are and occupying space accordingly. David Buss, professor of psychology at the University of Texas at Austin and one of the founding figures of evolutionary psychology, whose cross-cultural mate preference research has been replicated across 37 cultures, has consistently found that the qualities women most reliably prioritize in long-term partners are emotional stability, dependability, intelligence, and ambition, qualities that deepen with experience rather than diminishing with age. She is not choosing against you because of your age. She is choosing against you because she has not yet seen what your age contains. And the reason she hasn't seen it is not that it isn't there. It is that you have not yet learned how to let it be visible. That changes today. Here are the 7 principles. Each one has a name, a mechanism, and a precise application. By the time we have covered all 7, the feeling of invisibility will have a name and a solution. Principle 1. The arrival decision. This is the principle that determines everything before you say a word, and it is the one most men at your stage of life have never been taught to make consciously. The arrival decision is the internal choice you make before you enter any room, any conversation, or any interaction. I belong here, not aggressively, not with performance, simply with the quiet, unhurried certainty of a man who has stopped needing the room's permission to feel at ease in it. Research on posture and self-perception, including work from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, found that posture, expansiveness, activates a sense of power and produces behavioral changes in a person independent of their actual rank or role. Across multiple studies, posture consistently mattered more than hierarchy in making a person think, feel, and act from a position of internal authority. And when that internal state shifts, the observable behavior shifts with it. And that shift is what others read. For men who have spent years entering rooms in scanning mode, checking how they are being received before deciding how to feel about being there, the arrival decision is the correction. You decide before you arrive that you are not going to measure yourself against the room, you are simply going to be in it. What this looks like: you stop moving quickly to appear busy, you slow your pace, your eyes move with curiosity rather than surveillance, you let the room register you rather than reaching for it. That quality of unhurried self-possession is not manufactured. It is the natural expression of a man who has made a decision about himself before the interaction began. Principle 2. The depth advantage. This is the principle that most directly answers the question of how you compete with younger men. And the answer, once you understand it, makes the question itself obsolete. Younger men compete on surface. They compete on novelty, on energy, on the performance of potential. These are real qualities, valuable in their own context. But they are qualities a woman who has been around enough men has already evaluated. She knows what the surface looks like. She is not particularly moved by it anymore. What moves a woman who has lived enough to choose wisely is depth. The quality of a man who has actually arrived somewhere inside himself, who has faced loss and not been destroyed by it, who has made mistakes and not been hardened by them, who has earned an understanding of himself and others that no amount of energy or novelty can substitute for. Attachment research, built on the foundational concept of felt security first named by Sroufe and Waters in 1977 and extensively developed in adult attachment research by McUlincer and Shaver, identifies secure attachment as the most desirable quality in an adult partner across all age groups. The behaviors that express secure attachment: steady emotional availability, non-reactive warmth, the capacity to be genuinely present without urgency, are behaviors that deepen with decades of practice. You cannot fake depth. You cannot perform it. But you can stop apologizing for it. The depth advantage is not something you acquire. It is something you stop hiding. What this looks like: you stop minimizing your experience in conversation. You speak with the unhurried authority of someone who has actually thought about what they think. You share perspective rather than performance. When a woman asks what you've been through, you tell her something real rather than something impressive. Real always lands harder than impressive. Principle 3. The Stillness Signal. This is the most immediately observable principle, the one that communicates your psychological state before you have done anything at all, and it is the one most men at your stage of life are most naturally equipped to embody. The stillness signal is the visible absence of nervous energy, the absence of fidgeting, scanning, phone checking, and the manufacturing of busyness that signals a nervous system under low-level stress. Research in ethology and social psychology identifies these displacement behaviors as the body's visible expression of anxiety and social tension. People read them, not consciously, not analytically, but at a nervous system level, as signals of low internal security. What is read in the absence of these signals is something far more powerful. A man who can simply be in a space without needing to perform, manage, or fill it. This quality is genuinely rare, and for women who have spent years surrounded by men in constant motion toward the next thing, it registers as something close to extraordinary. A woman who walks into a room and encounters a man who is still, truly still, not passive but at rest, has encountered something her nervous system responds to before her conscious mind has formed an opinion. She doesn't immediately know why she notices him. She just does. What this looks like: put the phone away before she arrives. Let your hands rest. Let the silence between sentences exist without rushing to fill it. Your stillness communicates, without a single word, that you have no need to prove yourself to this moment. That is not emptiness. That is presence. Principle 4, the non-agenda presence. This is the principle most directly responsible for the quality that younger men almost never produce, and that women over 30 who have encountered enough men with agendas describe as one of the most magnetic things a man can offer. The non-agenda presence is the observable quality of being fully engaged with a person without needing anything specific from them. You are not managing her impression of you. You are not steering the conversation toward a particular outcome. You are not measuring whether things are going well by her moment-to-moment response. You are simply, genuinely, unhurriedly present. Research on what attachment psychologists call secure base behavior, built on Bowlby's foundational attachment theory, identifies non-reactive, consistently available warmth as one of the most powerful drivers of felt attraction and attachment in adult relationships. Its most observable expression is the absence of agenda, the quality of giving full attention without visible expectation of a specific return. For younger women who have experienced men whose warmth was conditional on reciprocation, and for women at any age who have encountered men using attention as a transaction, the non-agenda presence produces a response they often can't immediately name. They feel safe, not bored, not unchallenged, safe. And safety in the context of genuine attraction is not a consolation prize. It is the foundation on which everything else is built. What this looks like: you ask a question and you actually listen to the answer. Without preparing your next statement while she's still finishing her thought, you resist the impulse to demonstrate how interesting you are. You let her be interesting. You let the conversation breathe. You do not reach for her approval with every sentence. You simply stay. Principle 5. The direction signal. This is the principle that answers the question women are unconsciously asking when they evaluate a man at your stage of life, a question they rarely ask explicitly, but are always assessing. Is this man alive inside? The direction signal is the observable evidence that a man has a purpose, a set of values he is actively inhabiting, and a direction of life he has chosen rather than drifted into. Research by Dan McAdams, Henry Wade Rogers, professor of psychology at Northwestern University, on narrative identity, the coherent life story that psychologically well-functioning adults construct from accumulated experience, shows that people who carry a sense of purposeful personal direction are perceived as more trustworthy, more worth investing in, and more psychologically alive than people whose lives feel directionless or stalled. For women assessing a man at your stage of life, this signal is often the deciding one. Not does he have impressive achievements, but is he moving? Is he curious? Is he choosing his life actively? Or is he simply living out a momentum that started decades ago? The direction signal is transmitted in small ways, in how you speak about what interests you, in the quality of attention you bring to your own experience, in the absence of the bitter or resigned quality that settles into men who have stopped choosing actively. And crucially, it has nothing to do with youth. A man of 60 who is still genuinely curious, still building something, still asking questions about his own life, is more alive than any 30-year-old who has stopped. What this looks like: speak about what you are building, learning, or pursuing with the same energy you would speak about a great meal, not performance, not resume recitation. Genuine engagement with your own life, that energy is the signal. It is what tells her, this man is still here. He is still arriving. I want to stop here for a moment. If these 5 principles are landing somewhere true, if you are recognizing qualities you already have but never considered attractive, or patterns you've been stuck in that you now see differently, I want to say something directly. This was never your fault. Nobody taught you that the things you have spent decades building were attractive. You were raised in a world that told you attraction was for younger men, that your best years for being chosen were behind you, and that the correct response to aging was to compete harder on the surface or to stop expecting to be seen. That framework was wrong, and the fact that you carried it this far without knowing it was wrong is not a failure. It is the entirely predictable result of never having been given the correct information. Today, that changes. Principle 6, the honest reveal. This is the principle most directly connected to the experience of being genuinely chosen rather than politely included, and it is the one that requires the most courage to apply. The honest reveal is the act of sharing something real, something unperformed, something that carries actual personal weight. In the context of an interaction where the easier choice would be to stay on the surface. Research by Brené Brown, research professor at the University of Houston, who spent over 2 decades studying vulnerability and human connection, identifies the willingness to be genuinely seen, to show up without the guarantee of a particular reception, as the foundational condition for real intimacy. Her research confirms that we do not build deep connection through impressive presentation. We build it through the moments when we offer something real and find that it is received. For men who have spent decades in environments that rewarded competence and punished exposure, this principle requires a specific reframe. Sharing something real is not weakness. It is the most direct path to the kind of connection that makes a woman feel that she knows you. Not a version of you, not a performance of you, but you. Women over 30 who have encountered enough men performing themselves have developed an acute sensitivity to the difference between presentation and person. When you offer them something real, a genuine reflection, an honest admission, a story that costs you something to tell, they respond to it with a recognition that no amount of impressive content can produce. What this looks like, in a conversation that has been warm and easy, you say something true that you didn't need to say, not a confession, not a rehearsed vulnerability, something small and real. That period was harder than I let on at the time. Or, I used to be much worse at just being still. Or, that's something I'm still working out. Real, specific, and yours. That is the honest reveal, and it changes everything. Principle 7, the long game. This is the final principle, and the one that most clearly distinguishes men at your stage of life from the competition you have been afraid to enter. The long game is the understanding that genuine attraction, the kind that results in a woman making a real choice, not a reactive one, is not built in a single interaction. It is built across a series of consistent, small, real moments in which the same qualities show up reliably. Gottman's research at the University of Washington, which observed thousands of couples across decades, consistently found that the accumulation of small moments of turning toward each other predicted relationship satisfaction and longevity more reliably than how couples handled major conflicts. Couples who stayed together and reported high satisfaction turned toward each other's bids for connection 86% of the time. Those who eventually divorced turned toward those bids only 33% of the time. It is the daily, low-stakes responsiveness, not the grand gestures, not the significant conversations, that builds the felt foundation of a lasting relationship. Younger men are often in a hurry. They escalate quickly because their confidence requires the resolution of uncertainty. The long game requires no such urgency, because it is built on a security that does not need the relationship to arrive quickly in order to feel certain about itself. A man who is playing the long game is not pursuing in the conventional sense. He is simply, consistently, being exactly who he is, interested without urgency, warm without agenda, present without pressure. And over time, that consistency produces something that no single impressive interaction can manufacture. A felt sense in her that this man is safe to want. What this looks like. You do not rush to establish commitment. You do not amplify contact when you feel uncertain. You do not perform harder when the natural pace of the connection slows. You simply continue being yourself, curious, warm, honest, still, and you allow her the space to arrive at her own decision in her own time. The long game is not patience as endurance. It is patience as confidence. It is the behavior of a man who knows that what he has to offer does not expire. How many times in your past did you walk into a room, feel the familiar weight of assumed invisibility, and adjust yourself accordingly, becoming quieter, smaller, less present than you actually were, and then wonder why the connection never fully arrived? How many women who were genuinely looking for exactly what you had quietly moved on, not because you lacked anything real, but because you had decided before the interaction began that what you had wasn't enough. Let that settle. Not with regret, with awakening, because from this point forward, you see it differently. You know what the arrival decision requires. You know what the depth advantage is and why it matters. You know what the stillness signal communicates, what non-agenda presence feels like to a woman who has rarely encountered it, and what the direction signal tells her about whether you are still genuinely alive inside. You know that the long game is not a disadvantage. It is the only game that produces the thing you actually want. A woman who chooses you, not because you were the most available option, not because you were the most persistent, but because over time, consistently and without performance, you were undeniably, unmistakably yourself. And that self, the one you have spent decades becoming, was exactly what she was looking for. The feeling of invisibility is not a report about reality. It is a habit of perception, one that was installed early, reinforced quietly, and has been limiting you in every room you have walked into since. Put it down, not because you have nothing to offer, because you have more than you know, and you have been carrying it as a secret you were never taught to share. She is not choosing younger men because they are better. She is choosing what she can see. And from this point forward, you are visible. I'll see you in the next one.